Okay, guys. So another very special interview. As always, we have all these special interviews and special guests. In this particular moment, I think it's even more special because there's not many people who are dedicated like this man to jump on a podcast interviews, to share their stories, why to thrive in a current marketplace. And date is now 17 of March 2020, so you probably know, like, the coronavirus, everything is just starting out. So this man is going to talk about his journey in real estate. How did he start it? I'm very excited to cover many topics that I have in my head right now. So first of all, let me just introduce you to this man sitting here in front of you. His name is Tyler Chesser. He's the founder and the president of the Chesser Companies, a commercial real estate firm that focuses on a real estate investment, brokerage, and coaching for real estate investors. He's an experienced multifamily real estate investor, active and passive, and has experienced the success and failures of building a real estate portfolio. So we definitely can talk about success and failures. That's a good topic for sure. Tyler is also a co-founder of CF Capital LLC, a real estate syndication firm, which focuses on acquiring and repositioning multifamily assets in the Southeast United States and provides institutional quality services to its residents and outsized returns to its investment partners. And the bio continues, but I just want to mention he has a crazy, phenomenal, unbelievable podcast. It's called Elevate. You should go and check it out. Of course, I'm going to be dropping all the links down below for you guys.
Thank you, my brother.
No problem. So let's get into it. First of all, I just want to say a big thank you for doing this today, Tyler. Really appreciate it.
Martinez, it's a pleasure to be with you. It's always interesting to hear your bio, so I appreciate you reading that. It's a little bit embarrassing as well, but hopefully we're here to serve the people listening because, man, it's crazy times out there. It's absolutely crazy times, but you know what? This is what we train for. This is what we develop our own inner voice, our inner identity to rise to the occasion in these type of circumstances. So I'm excited to have a deep and impactful discussion with you today.
Awesome. I'm excited that you were excited. So first of all, I would love to just jump right in and talk about, have you ever had this identity where you always was this, man, I'm going to thrive in the business, thrive in like doing things and just, achieving big stuff? Like, was it, because again, for the audience, seeing you like committed, doing the podcast now and doing the phenomenal things. I mean, you have multiple businesses, podcasts, you're all over the place on social media. So have you ever been like this, or like where was the beginning for you?
Yeah, no, I have not always been like this for sure. It's interesting because I never really, growing up, I grew up as a kid, I was obsessed with basketball, to be honest with you. I just loved playing basketball. And I grew up in Kentucky, in the United States. And that's really what it's all about, is about basketball, horse racing, and bourbon. And
fried chicken.
Fried chicken, right? Yeah, absolutely. And, I just was obsessed with playing basketball. And as I grew up, my whole life was around playing basketball, whether it was raining, snowing, sleeting, whatever it was. I was always obsessed with playing basketball, and I was always inspired by guys like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, may God rest his soul, and others, in that kind of world. But, as I grew older, I recognized that I wasn't going to be an NBA talent myself. While I still loved the game so much, I started to say, well, what else can I do in this world? And I was just obsessed with, learning and growing, but I never knew that I had the capacity to be a leader until I just kind of got thrown into certain positions of leadership. And then when I was thrown into those positions of leadership, I learned that, to be a great leader, I needed to develop myself. I needed to be committed, at all times, to understand that, if I'm going to lead others, I need to lead, by example in different ways. And so, when I was in college, I led different organizations, as the president of different organizations, really just by default. And I wasn't, bred for that. I don't think I was a born leader in any way, other than the fact that, I have the ability and the capacity to communicate with others to a certain degree that I think, lends itself to a success from that. But I've also had to continue to develop that. And so, long story short, as I kind of grew as a leader and as I went through the discomfort as a leader, I started to say, wow, this is actually an amazing process because it's something that I really enjoy. And I've really, started to respect myself in the growth of this process, and kind of the other side of that discomfort, I've started to say, wow, this is an amazing process, and this process is something that I became addicted to. And so as I grew as a professional early on in my career, I started in the corporate world, and I learned that, you know what, the more and more that I grow as an individual, the more I can grow as a professional, the more valuable I can be for the organization. And I decided quickly through my process, you know, after a few years, that the corporate world wasn't going to be a place that I would fit, you know, sort of long term. And so I pivoted into real estate. But to be successful in real estate, I've always had to read books. I've always had to invest in coaching, go to conferences, go to seminars, whether they're real estate related or personal growth related or whatever it may be, you know, listen to every podcast I can possibly listen to, be involved in podcasts, because when I have these discussions, I learn more. You know, surround myself with great people, surround myself with people like yourself, people that I can learn from, and find those mentors, and continue to invest, you know, my own capital into myself, my own time, my attention into my skills, whether it's to, you know, increase my ability to communicate, increase my capacity to negotiate, increase my capacity to build and lead a team. Because to be able to scale, I've got to be able to develop systems and, you know, cultivate the appropriate strategy, along the lines of also, you know, making sure that my mindset is where it needs to be, you know, identifying the limiting beliefs that I have, identifying, you know, the inner voice that tells me I can't accomplish something, or the inner voice that says, wow, the coronavirus is, you know, it's destroying everything. You know, at the same time, I have to realize that, you know what, that's just my survival voice. And so, you know, I've just become so obsessed with this, because I've started to recognize as I look back, and you know, I'm excited. I'm anticipating the future, what I can look forward to. But when I look back, it's the brick after brick after brick that you lay, that you look back and are saying, wow, this is amazing. And it's actually, you know, my experience has been, it's an exponential sort of growth process. And when it feels like you're not making progress, and it feels uncomfortable, and it feels, you know, frustrating, you know, I've looked back and said, wow, those are the times when the things are happening beneath the surface, that all of a sudden, you know, things happen that, you know, the world looks back and says, wow, you know, he got lucky, and, or he or she or whoever got lucky. And I believe that you create your own luck from your commitment. And one thing that somebody told me years ago that really stuck with me is that every single day you have the opportunity of recreating yourself. You can recreate yourself daily. You can wake up and say, you know what, I'm proud of what I did yesterday. I'm proud of the effort that I put forth. And I know that those seeds will germinate in the future, but I've got to show up today. I've got to learn something new today. I've got to, you know, get 1% better in whatever I'm doing. And so that's been my mantra. And of course, not every day is perfect. You know, some days are better than others. I mean, you know, when you wake up and you notice that, wow, we all need to self quarantine, and what do we need to do? How do we do business? You know, how do we walk properties? How do we, you know, meet with clients or meet with investors or whatever it may be? Because it's such a relationship business. I mean, I love being able to look at you in the eyes right now and talk to you, and see your smiling face. And, you know, but it's not the same if we're not, you know, face to face. Now, granted, it's amazing that we have this type of technology, but, you know, so I don't know, I'm going all over the place here, but that's why I've just been so obsessed with growth, because I think it's really the key to everything you want in your life.
Yeah, totally agree. But I definitely would love to shake hands. You know, first of all, you know, due to coronavirus, you have to be careful, you know, with that. But I don't think my hands are that long, you know, so I can reach you there in the States
Yeah.
anyway. But, you know, it's awesome. Like, have you ever served in the military before?
No, I haven't.
You haven't, because you probably, you know, guys, drop a comment below if you think that this man has a military voice. I think he has
You're
this
saying that
little
because
bit.
my bald head, or, oh, the voice. Okay, got it.
It's the everything, man. It's everything. It's the mix. It's the mix of things. So maybe we can just dissect what you just said, because you said, you know, you mentioned a lot of things in here, but kind of I would love to understand. Again, you mentioned you've been working in the corporate world, and that's where a lot of people, when they spend some certain amount of time in there, they discover like, man, I'm stuck in a cubicle. Like there is no
Yeah.
exit for me, and they start looking. But there's still probably, you know, still the people who were colleagues of yours and they still work in. So like, what changed for you in that period of time? What got you frustrated or motivated to where you're like, man, I need to change everything?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question, because when I went through this experience, it almost felt like everything was flipped upside down for me, because I started to really question. It's like, man, I'm not happy. Number one, I wasn't happy. And I was working for a company that was really actually rated one of the top 50 companies in America to work for. from a culture perspective and from just an enjoyment perspective. And I looked around and I said, why am I the only one experiencing this? I don't understand. I was like, why am I not grateful for the situation perhaps? And so it really took some time for that to metastasize and for me to, start to get those feelings of frustration. And, it's interesting. I do look back on the situation and say that life happened for me and not to me, as our friend Tony Robbins always says. But, during that time period, it was very difficult. And, I was having a lot of, challenges that were sort of occurring in my life financially, actually. And as I was growing in my career, I was actually doing marketing, and I was actually doing international marketing for this organization. And I learned so much, and I really loved actually what I was doing, because that's what I wanted to do. When I went to college, I fell in love with really the consumer behavior, the psychology behind business. Why do people decide to buy a certain product, or why does a certain brand get, more value than another brand? And how does that sit in someone's mind? I just always found that to be so fascinating. So I was really enjoying the professional aspects of what I was doing. But from a practical and from a personal perspective, it was interesting because I purchased a home for, my primary residence while I was doing this job. And as I got more and more, sort of, I guess, recognition in the company and sort of grew, from a promotional standpoint, I wasn't realizing that financially as much as I had hoped or wanted to. And my house started to break down. It was really interesting. I started to get, different sort of maintenance things that would happen to my house. And looking back, it wasn't anything crazy serious, but at the time it felt, very substantial. And I started to feel very tight on my finances. And so I started to basically ask for raises. And, I got some raises, but they were really just kind of middle of the road, just, barely sort of getting me over a little bit of a, cost of living sort of raise. And so I started to get more and more frustrated by this. And so I started to say, well, what other options are there? And that's when I came across real estate. I started to ask everybody that I knew, like, what else could I do? What else is out there? And I started to learn more about real estate. And as many of your listeners, would probably relate, I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I said, wow, this is amazing. And it also further exasperated my feelings and thoughts on, well, wait a minute, is this the right place to be for me in a corporation? Well, I can learn so much. And I had mentors and people that I was learning from, am I in the right place of this cash flow quadrant? And so I started to want to take steps to getting in the right place. And so I don't know, that's been my experience. That was my journey early on. And the journey continues every single day. Let me just say that.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a great story. And thank you for sharing that. I think it's very important for people to hear. The question that I have right now in my head, I mean, it's unbelievable. You read the book, but I mean, the books I love in the day and age that we have, that we are in currently. I mean, there's so information available, and still I think it kind of becomes a problem because there's too much information and people can get confused when it comes to making a decision. But again, like Robert Kiyosaki, great book, phenomenal book. But look, there's a lot of people who read the book, but like nothing changes. They just read it, they say, man, that's a great book, and they just put it on a shelf. And like there's nothing changes. So what do you think, like, does anybody in this day and age can become successful because what you just said, you have some maybe leadership traits that are kind of in you, and maybe it's a gene, it's some type of blood, that you have in you, and it just gives you the drive, the motivation to do things? Or it could be anybody who can, be in the same position as you are.
Well, let me just say a couple of things. So about books, in my experience has always been, it's been really more of a practical outlook on books, because whenever I read a book, the first book I read, really after like my schooling, during when I hired my coach, he kept talking about books, and he would say, I got this, this, and this from this book. And I got this, this, and this from this book. And he mentioned so many times Think and Grow Rich. And I'm like, all right, I want to get rich. That sounds awesome.
Wow.
That sounds amazing. I'm interested. So I read this book, and I remember my eyes were absolutely crossed reading this book. I had no clue what it was talking about. Never heard of the subconscious mind. I mean, I studied marketing. You would think that a marketing professional would know all about the subconscious mind, because what are you doing other than communicating the subconscious mind when it comes to branding, when it comes to, marketing in general? And so it's so interesting to look back and realize that. But as I read that book, I said, you know what? I'm just going to commit to this. I'm going to try to figure this out and understand this and apply it immediately. And as I started to apply it, it was interesting because at the time I wasn't dating anyone. And I said, you know what? I see the fact that this book and the principles of this book can be applied to more than just money. And so I started to apply this on a social level, and the women started to flock to me. It was amazing. It was incredible. I'm not even kidding. I don't claim to be like some supermodel or whatever it is. It was this energy, and it
Yep.
was really the
Yeah.
principle
Oh
of
yeah.
attracting things that you want. And it was absolutely insane. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I started to apply it in everything that I was doing, and things just started to happen. My life started to change. And so I just became so addicted to it. And so then each and every book thereafter, when I read in the morning, and it's like, I'm going to apply this immediately, because otherwise I'm going to forget it or whatever it may be. And so that's the first thing I would say is, if you're reading a book, just go out there and put it into practice. Put it into practice immediately. If you listen to a podcast like this, pause it and go put it into practice, because that's really the only way that you're actually going to have lasting change and lasting results. So that's the first thing that I would say. The other thing too is, I think it's really important for us to all take an inventory of what is our belief system. Is it
Mm.
limiting beliefs or is it empowering beliefs? Because, the quote that I always go back to is, if you think you can't, then you can't. And I know that's true, because if I believe that anything is possible, well, then I'm going to go out and take action, from a subconscious and a conscious perspective, that anything is possible. And so, I believe that we can do big things in real estate. I believe that we can do massive things in the podcast space and in coaching and as syndicators. And just as a human being, I think that we can reach millions and millions of people and recognize the fact that anything is possible in your life. You don't just have to tolerate your life. You can go out there and live a life of fulfillment, and you can live a life of joy and creativeness and all these different things. But you just have to believe it's possible. And you also have to recognize that this is an ongoing process. You don't take a shower just once a week. You probably take a shower, once every day. And so you're going to need, maybe even more than that at this time. But you really need that continual inspiration and the continual recognition that your mind is trying to help you survive, especially in this moment in time. We're facing a global pandemic, and most folks are having survival thoughts right now. And so we've got to recognize, all right, thank you so much for protecting me, mind, self, consciousness, whatever it may be. And I need to take the driver's seat now. I'm going to go ahead and take the driver's seat, and I'm going to thrive. And I believe that I can survive and I can go beyond the circumstance, because I have an empowering belief system. And how do you do that? You've got to guard the gates of your mind, because, from every angle, there's news, there's media, there's opinions, there's people who are fearful of whatever moment, whether or not times are good or times are bad, this is the case. And so you've got to guard the gates of your mind. What are you allowing to come into your mind and plant seeds? And so I think it's very important for you to cultivate that and to really garden your mind, rip the weeds out from the roots of these limiting beliefs, and plant in the seeds of empowering thoughts. Read books. You've got to listen to podcasts like this. You've got to consciously choose who are the people that are allowing your mind to grow in a certain direction around you. So those are just a few things that I would, encourage your listeners to do, and to recognize that your mind is trying to help you survive based on evolution, based on, thousands of millions of years of evolution as a human being. At this point, if we want to do big things, if we want to do great things for other people, for our families, for ourselves, we've got to recognize that it all starts there. And we're not going to take the appropriate action if our mind is not cultivated appropriately. So that's that. And I'm trying to remember, the other piece of your question was about leadership. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a question. It was kind of a statement saying that you have a kind of a leadership traits in you,
Mm,
and is that kind of inherited? Because do you believe like there's
mm.
entrepreneurship DNA? Because there's all these high net worth individuals speaking on social media, and one is saying, look, you can be entrepreneur, but that has to be a certain DNA for you to become successful. And other side is saying, no, you can be like, you can start everything from scratch. So which side kind of you pick?
No, it's a really good question. I don't think I know the answer. I
Yeah.
don't think leaders are
What's your
born.
opinion?
Yeah, my opinion is I don't think leaders are necessarily born, because I
Mhm.
think that anyone can be a leader in their own right. A lot of times people will say, well, you know what? I can't start a podcast, or I can't start a business because, what am I going to do that's different than someone else? And you know what? One thing is, like, as someone who kind of connects with other people and hopefully influences other people in a different way, my voice and my outlook is not the same as yours, or it's not the same as Tony Robbins, or it's not the same as Napoleon Hill or Robert Kiyosaki or any of the folks that you and I respect.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think that there's always something that you can resonate with someone else in a different way. But I don't think that leaders are necessarily born, because I do think that it requires commitment. I think it requires, you to understand who it is that you are leading, and why would they want to be led by you, and what is it that you can offer them in terms of value, and how can you, be insightful for them, and how can you push them and pull them towards, an outcome that they may not have been able to accomplish themselves, and something bigger than themselves. So, as far as entrepreneurs as well, I mean, it is the hardest thing on the planet to run a business, in my opinion. Now, granted, I was not in the military. I've not done so many amazing things. I've never given birth, so there's so many things that, of course, let me just put an asterisk on that. But I believe, building a business is extremely challenging, and I've done it, and I continue to do it on a day in, day out basis. And the reason why I say that I don't believe entrepreneurs are born personally is because I think you have to earn it. I think you have to put in the work and show every single day that you're willing to, really be as dynamic as possible, because there's so many different skills and challenges that you face, and skills that you have to develop in the face of those challenges, and capitalizing on opportunities,
Yeah.
that it just doesn't come. It's not natural, like you've got to be creative, but then you have to be analytical. You have to build a team, but you also have to be, resourceful, and say, how can I be flexible in this situation? So it's not normal. It is something that you just have to develop yourself. And the greatest thing that's happened to me as I've built businesses and continue to do so is I've started to learn more about what I am capable of. And I've started to learn that I have so much more to give than I ever recognized. And it's the greatest personal growth experience of my life. And I'm really grateful for these experiences.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely brings some excitement, into life, especially in these times, because like it's all. Look, at the end of the day, it's all about the potential. Like how much
Yeah.
of you as a human being. Again, I'm talking, with the people who are watching this podcast, because you already discovered, you tapped into your potential, and once you tapped into that, I mean, there's no way back. You kind of operate onto that level until you break through, and there's another level. So you just keep going.
Yes.
But what you're saying is so true about leadership. I mean, because I love that you just said that. I agree with the people who say, there are certain traits, because if you want to become billionaire, maybe there are certain traits that you have to be born with, some intellectual, physical, whatever space you want to be in. But everything you can learn, like the books, what you mentioned, podcasts, just like yours as well. There's so much information available. But I think one of the best ways is to become a leader is, first of all, just to be sold on yourself. And
Mm.
what I mean by that, whatever you do, because we just had this conversation with wife a couple of days ago, we both operate businesses, completely different industries. And we were like, look, if somebody wants to be successful, they have to be sold on themselves and their product, their service first. If you don't believe in yourself, how somebody's going to follow you and say like, oh, I want to be part of that. So, it's super
I
important.
love that.
Yeah, and I would love to kind of dig deep into maybe the personal development side, because I see you love that thing as well. You understand the importance of having that. And you mentioned some books. You mentioned the book. I can't remember the name, but when you saying planting the good seeds in a garden, I know there's some book that talks about that, but I can't remember the name. But maybe you can give just like 3 business, personal development, real estate books, because now people will have a lot of time to read books that sit at home, so they
Yeah.
can grab and read those, what those would be.
Yeah, no, first of all, so the coronavirus and the situation, how do we use this opportunity to create what's next? How is this,
Yeah.
what space is this allowing us to invest in ourselves, into our own future self, and who we plan to be as a person? And so, this is a great opportunity for us to vote towards, who do we want to become? Because a lot of us have complained for so long that's, wow, we're too busy. I don't have enough time to do X, Y, and Z, and to
Now we got
read. And
time.
yeah, so now the question is, how are you using this time? And so
Yes.
I love this question, because books have become such a passion of mine. I'm sitting around a lot of books. You don't see them right here, but I can see them. So, a few of the books, one of which that I would start with is one called The Slight Edge by a man named Jeff Olson. I really, really love that book because, you know, it's all about anything in your life is easy to do or it's easy not to do. And it's
Mm,
actually interesting if you really break it down in that way. If you think about it, like, you know what, when you go to dinner, it's easy to order, you know, the fried platter, or it's easy to order the salad, right? And so obviously you're making a vote in one direction or another for the future, you know, self, your future self. And so each and every single decision, each and every moment of decision in your life is really what shapes your destiny. And so I love that book, The Slight Edge, because it really kind of breaks down, you know, not only what you do and make decisions in your business, whether you're a real estate investor and your goal is to make, you know, 5 calls that day, or, you know, have, you know, 2 meetings, or make an offer, or analyze a property, or whatever it may be. You know, it also comes down to what you're doing personally. And so, you know, if you're deciding that you're going to read 10 pages per day, and, you know, when you stack that on top of each other, one after another, you know, it's amazing when you look back and say, wow, these results have become exponential. And
compounds.
yeah, it absolutely compounds. And, you know, it's so interesting too, is that, you know, a rocket ship that leaves, you know, the planet Earth, that goes to, you know, the moon or wherever else, 98% of the time it's off track. And so once you start to realize that the course corrections along the way are really what gets you there, it's such an inspiring thought. But I really highly recommend that book. I love that one.
Wow, interesting.
Uh, so let me think of some others here.
So this is for you guys just to see the title, the cover. I'm gonna get a
Yes.
screenshot for that as well for
Super,
myself.
super good book. Love that one, man. You know, there's been so many others. I actually just had David Allen on my podcast, of Getting Things Done. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Wow.
GTD. It's a global phenomenon, but I actually read this book a couple of years ago by David, Getting Things Done, and I highly recommend you take a look at that one. I'll be honest with you, it sat on my bookshelf for, you know, probably a year or so, because I thought it looked like the most boring book on the planet. And as I dove into it, I said, wow, this is absolutely amazing. It's transformative, because of, you know, the productivity sort of techniques and the strategy towards really creating a mind like water.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because if you can develop systems in terms of your own processes in your life and in your business, it can free up your mind, so I can show up with you and be my best self, so I can show up in a negotiation, so I can build a relationship and be who I am, rather than holding things in my mind. You know, our minds were not built to hold, you know, things to remember, you know, little
Yeah.
tasks. So that's another one that I love.
Yeah. So again, there's the title. I don't know if people can zoom in, but I'm gonna put the links down below for you guys to check it out.
Yep,
Definitely, if I get the book, what you mentioned, probably have to read it right away, because I probably will be violating the title of the book if I won't do that. You know, getting
absolutely.
things done. It's amazing. The Art of Stress-Free Productivity. Great, great. Looks
Yeah,
like a great title and should be a great book.
yeah,
So, you know, expanding onto that personal development space, I mean, like if we're going to transition a little bit to real estate industry, I mean, you know, if somebody's just kind of a fresh, like I'm very green, like I don't know what's going on in real estate space. I'm not active, either passive in, you know, passively involved into the deals in no way. But like we have the clients that we work with, you know, a lot of clients in real estate industries, but that's pretty much it. Like, yeah, educate myself about that. One of the ways to educate yourself, because again, it's a kind of a sexy thing right now. Do you agree?
oh yeah,
People love real estate. People love multifamily when they probably love the name multifamily more than the business itself.
right.
So in some cases it does happen, right? So there's this, you know, option for them to learn, which is called mentorships. So, you know, from my perspective, if somebody's watching now and thinking like, okay, I got it. I got the books. I got the 2 books that, you know, Tyler recommend me. What about the mentorship? Sure, we'll go and go and get the mentor. It doesn't have to be 6 figures, but like, do you believe in that? Or it's just the books? Like, what's your perspective on mentorships?
Absolutely believe in that. And I've invested in coaching my entire time that I've been in real estate. And I also coach others. So I'm a huge believer in coaching. I know the process is transformative because I've given it to others, I've seen it myself. You know, it's interesting because when you have someone who can help you distill and create a strategy and, you know, implement systems and develop systems that are unique for you, because we all have a different outcome. You know, real estate, when you say the words real estate, it means something vastly different perhaps to you than it does to me. I mean, there's so many different approaches that you can take. And at the end of the day, real estate is a vehicle towards creating an outcome in your life. And so I highly recommend, your listeners to look into, finding a mentor, whether it's officially or unofficially. If you want somebody to hold you accountable, if you want somebody to help you develop time management strategies and work on the limiting beliefs that we talked about earlier, and really sort of dive in deeply and understand, well, how can we, develop this, Amazon rainforest of a garden in your mind that can create unlimited abundance. And so, if you, that's just something that has been really transformative for me. But, it's interesting is because you walk in the door and you say, hey, look, I want systems, I want a strategy. And you walk out and say, I want, to create the best identity that can then serve and create scale and can create, opportunity for my family and for others. And so, the first thing I would do for other, for your listeners is certainly start reading the books and start to ask yourself, well, what are my goals? And, what does that look like? And then how can someone else help me get there? Because there are many people out there that can help you get there. You just have to align with them sort of energetically, as well as, what have they done? What sort of resources can they provide you? What sort of network can they tap you into? Because I think that's one thing too, is it takes a long time to develop your sphere, as you are new in the real estate business and start to understand, well, you know what, it's almost like drinking from a fire hose in the beginning, because you're like, wow, I don't even know how to analyze the property. I don't know how to manage it. I also don't know how to finance it. I don't know how to close it. I don't know what I'm doing on asset management. I also have no systems and all these different things. And so, it can be very overwhelming. And in my opinion, if you invest in mentoring, if you invest in coaching, you can circumvent a lot of these challenges. I know myself, even in the beginning, when I started investing in real estate, if I would have had better mentors, if I would have had better coaches, I probably would have lost a lot less money than I did. And it was sort of the school of the hard knocks. And so, I think it's a wise investment, and it's an investment that really kind of returns to yourself, for the rest of your life as well. So that's another thing to consider. But yeah, I've always been a huge proponent of mentorships and coaching.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Totally agree. I mean, because I ask this question quite often, people just like yourself who understand the, personal development side and, the books and the mentorships and the coaches. But probably some of you guys, who are watching, I hope these people are, some of the friends of mine who's saying, oh no, I don't read the books. I don't read the books. I just go on YouTube and, listen to a few podcasts. I don't need a mentor. And I'm like, man, you're setting yourself up for a big failure, which
Yeah.
what you said, if you paid more and if you reached out for, bigger players, which I'm sure you did anyway, but, once you like start to look back, I should reach for, paid more for that. And I probably lost less money. So again, that's what happens, because you want to shorten the timelines, like the time frames. You don't want to go 30 years figuring stuff out by yourself. You want to do in 10, 5, 3 years, like in 1 year, if possible.
Totally
So
agree.
yeah, talking about that, like real estate, definitely great space, like multifamily. So kind of, combining the two things, like multifamily is great thing, it survives the downturns like the one we're kind of facing right now with the stock market. And there's a lot of, uncertainty going on with the virus. So like, can you talk again, being active in the business, like, can you give us some insights, what do you think the industry is going to go? What is going to happen, like with the vacancy rates, like, with the multifamily properties, like, are people scared, like about the virus, tendencies, like what's going on in that space in general? Just
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, definitely first, my prayers and thoughts are with everybody impacted. I mean, really, it seems
Mhm.
like the entire planet is impacted to a certain degree, but obviously with those who, are actually haven't been infected and, family members, things like that. So let me just say that that's more important than business for sure. But
Yeah.
as it relates to real estate itself, it's hard to say how this will impact the multifamily business. But, from a short-term perspective, of course, interest rates have absolutely plummeted. So everybody's refinancing. We're seeing that immediately right now. And it's attractive from the acquisition standpoint as well. If you can start to find some deals, which I think over the next few weeks, we'll start to see how that shakes out from a deal flow perspective. But from an operational perspective, the biggest thing that I see is how does this actually impact the residents? How does this impact their sort of employment opportunities? Are they working for, you know, a restaurant or a bar or a factory that may have closed for quarantine or maybe closed permanently due to the impact of this, then obviously you're going to have a significant amount of fallout there. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And I don't think anybody can really actually predict that. You know, like in the United States right now, they're planning on potentially, you know, some sort of a stimulus package where perhaps some of this is backfilled to a certain degree, which would then sort of be a, you know, a backfill as well for the owners of the multifamily real estate. And so I think that's really interesting to see how that will play out. From an occupancy perspective, you know, it's really all about just servicing, you know, really their obligation from a resident standpoint, and how does that impact the owner. The other thing too is that, you know, you're starting to see in several different markets that there's at least been a hold on evictions. You're starting to see that,
Yeah.
where tenants are really, you know, they're allowed to stay in place at least for the short term until this situation is figured out. And so that obviously stops revenue from an ownership perspective.
Mm.
So that is a very interesting development that we all need to kind of stay on top of and see how that's going to play out. You know, I think prior to the coronavirus, a lot of people were, you know, concerned about rent control that is occurring in certain markets. And
Mhm.
so that, you know, the eviction sort of halt reminds me somewhat of that in some ways, where it seems like, you know, how do you win as a landlord in that type of situation? So we're definitely dealing with a rapidly changing environment. But, you know, from a big picture, I see multifamily as a great place to be. In the global environment, I would rather be in multifamily real estate than anywhere else, with all of these headwinds, you know, understood, and understanding that also, look, at the end of the day, we're self-isolating at this current moment. And where are we self-isolating? Where we live, right? And
Yeah.
so, you know, folks are still, you know, they're still going to the grocery store. They're still, you know, they're working from home, whether, you know, whether they have a job or not. And many folks that do have their jobs obviously are working from home. And so, you know, you're seeing that as a priority in most people's lives. And obviously, as to be successful as a real estate investor, you've got to be thinking about, well, what is the priority in my occupants' lives? And you know, one of the
Mhm.
things that office real estate investors would probably be highly concerned about is, how does this impact sort of the future of occupancy of office versus, can people, you know, have they recognized perhaps more so that they can now work remotely and work from
Yeah.
home, and how does that work? But you know, in general, we love multifamily real estate because in times of uncertainty, you know, we have the opportunity to pivot each and every unit. Like if, you know, if someone loses a job and they need to move, then, you know, perhaps they're going to consolidate, you know, their household with another household. And so then you've got the opportunity of saying, all right, well, you know, we didn't lose, you know, 30,000 square feet of occupancy. We lost, you know, 800 square feet. And now we have the opportunity of remarketing this unit. And so you kind of mitigate your risk per unit overall. And so I don't know, those are a lot of the sort of big picture things that I'm seeing, but I'm happy to go into more depth on anything if you'd like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's definitely awesome. I love what you just said, you know, because I mean, with the uncertainty, what's going on, and I think people, at least some of the people and some of the companies will start looking differently into the tenant screening process. Probably they're gonna start looking for some freelancers. I don't know, people who can work from home just to make sure that they can position, you know, in a better, you know, because nobody planned this up. You know, people knew the stock market is gonna go down, but nobody knew like people will lock themselves in their homes, and you know the jobs are going to be going away, and there's, again, which you mentioned, restaurants are closing and people getting, you know, getting laid off. So that's kind of a, you know, bad thing, because you know, if they will put in place that they cannot, they have to stay, I mean, you know, rent free kind of a, and you know, you cannot, like, you're not going to put them in the street. So that's going to
Exactly.
affect the revenue, and that's going to affect the business. But I mean, that's the times that we live in, and nobody knows how long is that going to happen. People are saying it's going to be 2, 4, 6 months. I mean, it's a lot of uncertainty. But you know, do you think even in this time, what you're saying is a great, you know, investment still? You know, if the business operating, you know, you have people in, they're paying rent. So, you know, talking about the markets again, looking from a passive investor standpoint, can you talk
Mhm.
about why is it still good to be invested? How does that, you know, better than the stock market? I mean, you know, it's obviously better than what it is
Yeah.
right now, but it's definitely going to come back. But, you know, there is different investment vehicles. And like, what states do you invest in, and like, what do you provide for people? Kind of, I know you don't have to, you can go like more into detail because of the SEC regulations, but kind of a broad picture of why is it better than anything else that's out there.
Yeah, no, this is a great question. By the way, this is an awesome interview, man. You're really good at this, so I really appreciate that. No, so to answer your question, why is multifamily a better investment opportunity than the stock market? In my opinion, obviously it's a tangible asset. It's a real asset. It's not based on emotions, as many stock values are. We feel very certain, we feel very excited, and all of a sudden the stock market shoots up, or we feel very fearful and uncertain and worried, and it drops precipitously. And so I see that to be very interesting. And the fact of multifamily real estate, in general, is more of an illiquid investment. So yes, you're not going to do a day trade on a multifamily deal. And because of that fact, it's less driven by these just finicky emotions of the market. Human beings are finicky and emotional, and that's what we talked about earlier, is limiting beliefs. And the baseline is limiting beliefs across the globe. And so that's really kind of where I start this from a psychological perspective. But I see real estate, it's valued based on the cash flow. It's not based on some figure that we feel, some multiple of whatever the PFS or whatever it may be. It's valued based on the cash flow. And so obviously, you have to look at it and say, is it a risk-free investment? No, of course not. Yes, there are situations such as these black swan events that can occur that can require your tenants to really have to pivot in different ways that can then decrease your revenue. Now, do we think that 100 or a 200 unit apartment complex is going to go completely vacant? No. Now, could that happen? Perhaps, but we don't believe that would ever be the case. And so we feel like it's much less risky than some other sort of emotion-driven value assets. So the other thing too is that, in times like these that are bad, it has a minimum downside, and in good times, it has a huge upside. And so not only the fact that you can, you have an asset that retains its value and grows over time, and you can actually force that appreciation as well, but you can also earn, great cash flow. And, for our investors and our deals, we pay a preferred return. And there's also a percentage of that upside as well, as we can, go in and add value and create a business plan and have a strategy for, 5 to 7 or whatever years down the road, to where there's an equity multiple that's available for investors as well. So, those are the reasons why I love it. I'm a passive investor. I'm an active investor. I'm a syndicator. I put my money where my mouth is, and I feel very confident and comfortable in a time like this to say, you know what, in a crazy time like this, we're still earning cash flow, and we're still able to, to do what it takes to make sure that our residents are safe and that they have a quality place to live and that we're attentive to their needs. And so I think having a long-term perspective, I would much rather be in the real estate business than, in some of these other non-tangible assets.
Yeah, particular multifamily business, just to clarify,
Absolutely.
because like, we do believe it, because we had this conversation with my wife personally multiple times. And again, being a business, people, we kind of, for us, like what you mentioned, passive investing, I think it's a great thing. Again, we're not, involved into any deals right now, but we're definitely looking at some point, because now it's all about scaling the business and just putting, systems in place and, all the boring stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, but
Well, I forgot to answer one part of your question. So
sure.
we buy across Kentucky and the Southeast, in the Southeastern United States. So we're looking for, 100 to 250 to 300 unit, properties. And, we offer opportunities for accredited investors to have that opportunity to passively invest, to where we send them a cash flow every single month, and we give them the opportunity for upside. And so, we do require, the opportunity to build a relationship and to understand, what are your goals, because not everyone that we come in contact with is a fit for our opportunities. We have to understand, well, what are you looking to accomplish in your life? And, we'd be more than happy to make a better recommendation for you. But I just wanted to answer that question earlier, because I forgot to answer it.
Yeah. No worries. Definitely. Because, that's the perspective, because you, at the end of the day, you're just providing a service. You're looking to fill in the gap that this, accredited investor is having. Like, you want to, like, 3x, his money that he's investing. And I see so many great stories, like, where people, they invest, let's say, that's whatever 100K or 500K into a deal, and it becomes 1.5 in like 3-5 years, then you're gonna 1031 into another deal, and it's gonna just keep going. And that's definitely, it's a super great way for somebody to become wealthy and just to become rich, if that's your goal.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to become, you have to reach that level when you're accredited. I know there's people and companies who take non-accredited investors as well, but of course it's not going to be same returns. The structure is different and the payouts, everything. So do your due diligence and research, because again, I'm not an attorney and you're not, so you have to
Yeah.
do your own stuff,
Well,
research.
the other thing too is I'm not a CPA, but you
Yeah,
also get the tax benefits, and the tax benefits in a lot of times, especially for accredited investors, are almost as attractive as the wealth accumulation benefits. And so it is definitely an exciting opportunity, and the wealth creation is amazing. And the fact that you could get that ACH, and it's like, wow, I just invested with somebody I trusted, and obviously I did my due diligence on that individual. I recognize that they're somebody that I can trust, I want to do business with long term. But it's amazing when you start to feel the comfort of that continual cash flow.
yeah, definitely. Cash flow is the king, is not the
That's
cash,
right.
right? You don't want to be liquid right now. You want to invest somewhere. So it's
Absolutely.
definitely the true, like the tax advantages. Because I remember I had just a long story short, I had this lady, she's well known in the space as well. And she said, like, the one thing that I invested in real estate multifamily for is the tax advantages. I was
Mm.
like, how do I pay less in taxes? And she found the
Yeah,
way through multifamily investing. So
it's amazing.
it's definitely amazing. So
Well, and just to give your listeners a little bit of more insight on
you're,
that, is it's you get a pass through on depreciation and interest, and then obviously it's taxed at a different rate as your regular income. Of course, you want to advise with your CPA. You want to get some counsel from your tax team, but just know that that is available to you. And I don't believe that it's available to you in a real estate investment trust, as an example, which is more of kind of a stock
yeah,
in a real estate holding corporation. So that's
yeah.
just a distinction to make. So build relationships with folks who are doing this, whether it's my company or someone else, because there's amazing opportunities that many people are not aware of.
Yeah, definitely. So we definitely going to put some links for you guys to get in contact with Tyler and just ask some, questions about investing, actively, passively, whatever you want to take, whatever approach. So, but I would love to touch one point, because when you mentioned, it was written in the bio, and you mentioned yourself, you were involved into this marketing kind of business, if I'm right,
Yep.
like, that stuff. So do you believe, and do you still use, I mean, you have the podcast and like you put yourself out there all over the place all the time. And I think right now in this moment, and we just put out a blog post yesterday, actually, I think that was today, why people like real estate industries, everybody should start posting like crazy, because everybody going to stay at home. They're going to scroll to Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and watch YouTube videos. So I think people kind of should like put the foot to the metal, or whatever, pedal to the metal thing, and just do more. So, but from your perspective, like being a marketing, social media guy, let's say, like, do you believe still in that? And what do you apply for your own business, like on a day-to-day basis? Maybe some softwares just kind of helps you to expand the business and make some, day-to-day tasks to run more smoother for your own business.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Because you know what, me and you wouldn't know each other if it wasn't for social media. And so I'm really enjoying this
Thank you,
conversation. And
Facebook.
yeah, absolutely. And we wouldn't be having this conversation with the listeners as well if it wasn't for, the opportunities that are out there. So I believe that social media, you have to use social media, not let social media use you, because I think there's two different things.
Yeah.
Are you scrolling mindlessly? Are I enjoy memes just as much as the next guy. Don't get me wrong. I crack up at a meme every now and then. So do not get me wrong. It doesn't always have to be so serious, but use it to build relationships. One of the things that I think is great about real estate is that we can put out content like this, and we can attract those who align with us in different ways to come into our world. And, it's done in a way that, everybody wins. And so that's been my experience with social media since day one, is that it's allowed me to really kind of, spread my message out there and let folks get an understanding of who I am, so that we can build a warm relationship without having any understanding of each other, and then gain, a deeper understanding of who each other are, from a deeper one-on-one perspective after that. So, I use, a lot of different tools. Really, I have an individual on my team who really focuses on all of the marketing for our company, And, we're a lean and mean team, but he focuses solely on marketing and media. And, we do the podcast, we do social media. I'm sorry, we do YouTube videos in conjunction with the podcast, of course. And many folks consume the YouTube videos there. And then, of course, we spread that to LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and, we do blogs and all that kind of stuff as well. But I use actually a tool called Hootsuite, which allows me to post on multiple platforms at one time, because,
Yeah.
we're reaching a different audience on each different platform. It's a different type of individual. And so we do have to tailor our message slightly differently depending on where the audience is,
Yeah.
and just to be cognizant of that. But, I also run Facebook groups. We have even kind of smaller groups, like I'm in a mastermind where we use only kind of WhatsApp. And, there's other ways to communicate there. I mean, there's other, if you want to build a deeper relationship from there, technology is so exciting, because things like Boxer, things like obviously texting, FaceTime, Zoom is amazing. There's so many different tools. But at the core of all this is about adding value to someone else and developing a strong and deep and meaningful relationship. If you're just out there posting and you're not looking at the incoming back and realizing that this is really an ongoing conversation in each of these different platforms, I think that that's when you sort of miss the boat a little bit. So I think it's important to recognize that, but then to use your tools to, to the advantage of what you're looking to accomplish. And it's all amazing. And that's the other reason why it's like the coronavirus. It's like, man, it can make us go inside or make us quarantine ourselves. But look, we're still so connected. There's still so many possibilities.
Yeah, definitely. Once the Facebook is going to be operating, and all these channels, we're going to be doing these podcast interviews for as long as the Corona can stay here forever. We're going to be doing this forever as well.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Exactly.
So
Just be ready to pivot. How are we going to adapt? We got to adapt in the situation, and so that we've got so many
exactly.
tools at our disposal.
I think, like, because I watched this talk not long ago, and this guy said, very successful entrepreneur, and he said, I deeply believe that entrepreneurs and business-driven people is going to change the world. Because those people are the smart ones. Well, maybe not, by looking at the degrees. Some of those don't have the college degrees, but they're fairly like creative, successful, smart people who can solve all these big problems. And now, like, look what's going on with the like virus. And I think even Trump, like, putting some big players like like Walmart, I don't know, like, just putting people together, making sure that they can solve the problem. So it's always going to be those business-driven people and the creative ones. So, guys, just find the creativity in you, like what Tyler said, just grab the books, surround yourself with the people, like start doing the podcast. Now I think it's the best time to create something like that in the digital space. Because what you mentioned, there's a lot of platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, blog posting. And you can do that, like with the softwares that you just mentioned, like Hootsuite will help you to do those things, So it's all about, just crafting a message, putting it out there. And now it's easier than ever. So talking about that again, before I used to say this to the guests, because that was always my question, and I'm going to ask you the same question. I always used to say, it always goes like this: 2020, it's kind of exciting year, brand new year. So now I have to kind of flip it now, because, 2020, it was kind of a magical number for me personally.
I agree.
Like 2020, it's like, oh my God, like, but it started kind of crazy, the wildfires like in Australia, and now this, and like the markets, and it's insane. But I think still is going to come out, like, whatever you're going through the winter, there is different season after. You just have to survive, but it's not even about surviving. Here we have Tyler, because he's going to show us how to thrive. And I think he gave us a lot of great tools, how you can implement in your, time that you actually have infinite time right now while you're sitting at home, how you can do something and just impact you, that will impact your life in a great way. And at the end of the winter, you're going to come out, prosperous and just do better, in personal life and in business. But talking about your business, because that was the question, maybe you can share some of your goals for this 2020 year, what you're still looking to accomplish. Have you changed some of your goals, and like what you're planning to do for this year?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm still really excited about this. And you know what, through every adversity, there's an opportunity. And it's every time you have a trouble, or every time something sort of, is in your road as a roadblock, you have to look at it and say, well, what is this teaching me, and what type of opportunity is this creating? And when I take the detour, you know, what other opportunities am I going to see along this path? So I think reframing and looking at, you know, challenges and recognizing that anything is possible, and that, you know, these challenges are meant to serve you. You know, life happens for you and not to you. And so, you know, with that said, you know, I definitely still have big goals, and I look at my goals every single morning. You know, one of the goals that we have with CF Capital, you know, we just launched this syndication firm, and you know, our goal is to acquire 25 million in assets this year, and that's across 2 deals. So we're not going, you know, we're not going above and beyond. We're not doing crazy things, but we're also not setting small goals. And you know, we're looking to partner with great people, people who want to obtain, you know, the amazing benefits of real estate. And you know, we've got a deal that's really in our crosshairs right now that we're negotiating with the owner, that we're really excited about. And so we're continuing to push forward. And I think that, you know, this situation perhaps is going to create more opportunities that didn't exist before, because, you know, I don't know about you, but it's been a tremendously competitive environment, and I would expect it to remain competitive, you know, to certainly a certain degree. But we'll see how this sort of opens up some new opportunities from the acquisition standpoint. And then obviously our goal is then to operate to, you know, to the highest capacity and to the best of our abilities, you know, for the residents as well as for our investors. And so, you know, that's one of the big goals. You know, from a personal perspective, I'm getting married this year. So excited about that.
Hey.
And getting married in July. I mean, we'll see. Hopefully that stays that stays on track. But you know, definitely excited to get our marriage started, and to we're going to Africa, man. We're gonna go to we're gonna go
Wow.
on a safari, and go to see the you know, amazing things that Kenya has to offer. And so really excited about that. And we love to travel, man. And I have a lot of goals, but those are 2 that I'm most excited about, for that, you know, I'm defiantly committed to making happen in my life, no matter what challenges are in the road.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. Because you see, this man is living by the rule of thriving, you know, in business and personal life. So again, congratulations with getting married. My wife just showed me on the phone, because this is 18th, and we got married on 18th. So she was like, 5 minutes past, it's 18 already. So
Wow, that's
we're gonna
awesome.
celebrate after the interview.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. So, you know, it's been a good journey, definitely. So, you know, before we're going to go, I just want to say a big thank you. It's been a true pleasure, honor to be, you know, talking with you, and just to get to know you, because I see you all over the place. I'm a big fan. I follow you. Like, you're doing great stuff, not with the podcast, but just with the business, with life. You're impacting a lot of people at the same time, you know, in a great way. So, you know, just big thank you for doing those things, you know, so.
Oh, thank you, Martinez. You are so kind, and it's been so much fun. And man, I really cheer you on in your journey, and looking forward to you know, hopefully this adding a ton of value to not only, you know, you and myself. I mean, to be honest with you, this I've learned a lot in our discussion as well. But really appreciate you taking me on, and giving me the opportunity to speak to your listeners as well. But I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for the challenges every single day, and how can we become great? The question is, you know, what is this doing to serve me? And what is every situation, whether it's a win or a loss, you know, what can we do to learn from this and become more? So I'm so excited, and I really thank you for your kind words.
Here you go. Here you go. I don't know what you learned in this podcast episode, Scott. Actually, I didn't say a thing, but you know, guys, if you want to get in contact with Tyler and ask him questions about real estate investing mindset, I don't know, but you know, I recommend do your, you know, like research. Don't come in cold asking some random questions. You know, like, because this man, as you see, he's busy. He's running all over the place. Like, if you're interested in investing with him or asking real estate investing questions, go on, find him on social media platforms. So before we go, what those platforms would be for people to get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So on Instagram, you can find me at the Tyler Chesser, and that is the same for Twitter. On YouTube, of course, you can just find me, Tyler Chesser. Elevate Podcast is everywhere as well, on every single platform. And then you can visit a couple of my websites would be coachwithtyler.com. Again, that's coachwithtyler.com. Or, of course, just tylerchesser.com. So there's many ways to get in touch, and be super grateful to build a one-to-one relationship with any of your listeners.
Awesome. Awesome. And on that note, guys, if you enjoyed the show, you already know what to do. Click the like, subscribe to the channel. And as always, you know, go and check it out, Tyler's platforms, go in contact with him on the social media level. If you're in the States, maybe you live close by, knock on door and, hey, Tyler, let's make something happen. Definitely, it's all about, meeting people, impacting people, helping, each other at the same time along the way, and this man is truly proven that he's a go-giver, thriving in his space, even in these times. So, definitely go in contact with him. And guys, as always, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and as always, I'm going to see you on the next episode. Thank you.